movie Stargate or Stargate SG-1. And there has been, rumors in more modern times around if we are traveling to other parts of the solar system or doing certain things, is it possible that we already have a technology that's beyond just spaceship travel that's allowing us to do it? And so we do hear from various pools of ufology information that there is this technology that exists, maybe a secret space program utilizing it to some regard. But that's a little hard to confirm right now. But what we do have is a lot of ancient references of sites that are referenced as a doorway or literally a gate to the gods. Various sites in Peru, in Bolivia, South America, we have these intricately carved stones, megalithic stones, where we don't even know how they were able to carve and manipulate the stones. But what they've done in certain cases is make doorways or passageways where it's literally a door carved into a solid rock. The idea that you would somehow pass through, is something that we still don't understand, but all these ancient references of some type of travel, petroglyphs, various ancient infographics, if you will, that are depicting man traveling through some swirling mechanism or coming out of these types of mechanisms. So I got to at least give credit to the movie Stargate for helping us visualize if it is some type of physical travel. We don't know. I think they did a good way of explaining what it might look like, because there are enough references to suggest that there was some ancient technology allowing people to open up some type of portal or Stargate.
The Bible or the Old Testament tell us about Stargates?
Well, we're going to go a little bit beyond that. I am a little bit different in our experiences than my esteemed peers here, in the respect that which we call stargates, or if you will, traveling through space, folding space, is an actual realistic spiritual technology which is still very well practiced in the Kabbalistic circles, and to the best of my knowledge by the Tibetan Buddhists. I have spoken with people from the ashrams of the Dalai Lama who understand, as is understood in the biblical, prophetic, now called Kabbalistic traditions, the existence of a specific type of a tonal technology, the usage of sound, where in which, by putting one into a specific meditative trance, projecting thought, channeled through specific types of tones. This is exactly what the high priest would do when he would approach the Ark of the Covenant on the Day of Atonement. Why we call God's name holy and ineffable. You cannot pronounce it because the correct pronunciation would actually bend space and time. This technology is still well known and well practiced amongst certain circles. In our Kabbalistic tradition, it's called Chavitzat Haderech. Frank Herbert, the author of Dune, used the same concept with his character of the Kwisatz Haderach. In matter of fact, David Lynch, in his Twin Peaks show, also made reference to this with his opening in the doors to the Black Lodge. So you see this stuff even in the modern realm. But the point that I'm trying to help you understand is that we don't need a mechanical external technology. I know Travis and others are working to accomplish that. But this type of a technology and the specific tone sound resonances, some would call them primordial sounds, when activated in certain ways in certain places, opened up vortexes. In our Torah tradition, many a rabbi were called a Baal Shem Tov, a master of the good name, because what they were able to do with the usage of these tones were to be able to create healing, or the opposite, to create death. They were able to transverse great distances instantaneously. These stories and legends exist to this very day. We know examples of this from the biblical example, and these legends continue to today. So that which we call a stargate, we do not look at as a technological device, as is outlined, of course, in the film, even though we do believe that those types of things do exist. We know that there was such a thing under the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. We know that there is such a thing underneath the city of Hebron, which supposedly leads to inner earth, which is the believed true location of the Garden of Eden. And many of our ET friends might be hanging out down there as well. But that opens up all kinds of other things. So again, the Stargate understanding is very well understood by us, but not in a technological way, but we can call it a spiritual technology.
Thanks.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm a big fan of Stargate SG-1 anyway, and of the movie. In fact, I've actually been in Cheyenne Mountain to the door that's got Stargate Command over it, but you open it up and it's a broom closet. And believe me, I pushed every brick, pulled every broom handle, touched every knob.
You need the tone, man, the tone.
No door opened up and took me down to the Stargate. But yeah, Hollywood has done a pretty good job in most films in the modern era. Actually, they referenced hard science fiction from the golden era of science fiction during the 30s to 50s. Robert Heinlein wrote a book called Tonal in the Sky, where he was the first one to sort of predict that you could create something like a wormhole gate that you could travel through. But the idea is that you're going to need something that excites space and time in such a way. So how is it that you grab space and time right here and poke a hole in it such that a hole opens somewhere over there across the universe, and then you can keep that hole open and crawl through it? Well, William mentioned Carl Sagan in his book Contact, written in 1984. Carl Sagan was not an astrophysicist. His specialty is in astrobiology. But he did, when he was starting to write this book, he asked Kip Thorne, right here at Caltech. He said Kip Thorne was the guy on the planet at the time that was the gravity guru and general relativity guru. And so Kip Thorne went off and studied for about 3 or 4 months a way to figure out if it was in the confines of physics that you could create a wormhole. And he said, yes, you can, but you have to have this magic material that looks like negative energy or negative matter. But instead of calling it negative, he called it exotic because it has other properties than just being negative. And he said, if you have this, then when the wormhole opens up, you can shove it in there real quick, and it won't let the wormhole close. And an interesting property of this exotic matter, you think, well, your tunnel's got a ball in there and keeping it clogged up, right? Well, this exotic matter doesn't interact with regular matter. So you can pass right through it and go on, come out the other side, then reach in and pull the ball out to the other side, and the wormhole will collapse. And this is kind of how Hollywood does it. They have some kind of mechanism that acts that way. Like in the Avengers, they had the dark matter that they used to project the wormhole that was created over New York. And Stargate, well, whatever the gates are made of, they've analyzed them and analyzed them. They're made of that alien material that they can't reverse engineer. So there's always some magic wand that you have to invoke, right? We need to invent that magic wand.
This is the message of Earth black holes as well, is that we've got to get out of our box. We've got to change our perception. One of the reasons I think that scientists have such a difficulty in locating stargates or talking about these concepts is because they're always sitting on it. They don't realize what the human body actually is designed to do. Those same images of the arcs of the millions of years that I talked about, where I made that connection back in 2003, the first time I went to Egypt, looking up at the ceiling at Dendera and saying, those are the gods which were actually transformed humans, who went from human to celestial being, riding in the cosmos on their celestial ships. I was at a conference once, a UFO conference, several years later. A couple come up to me, introduced themselves. They said they both had PhDs from the Harvard Divinity School. They work for the Dalai Lama. Their specialty is what is known as the Great Perfection or the Rainbow Body of Light teaching. And what they said is that my work on these stargates, black holes in Egypt, and wormholes answered for them a question that the Dalai Lama wouldn't even answer because it was so secret in Tibetan Buddhism. And that is that they teach that the human body was designed to be dissolved into light. And that once it's dissolved into light, they said, based on my work, it is then able to open a wormhole and traverse the cosmos. And so I started putting that piece together about the human body as the Stargate and finding all kinds of references in the ancient world of the body itself being the Jacob's ladder or the stairway to heaven and all of these references, with this idea that it's the ultimate intention is to open wormholes. Sure enough, there's a perfect fit. And so you have this, as the rabbi was saying, a whole spiritual tradition that backs up this idea of stargates and wormholes, but it requires a spiritual consciousness in order for us to be able to access them or even to fully utilize this spiritual technology.
It's interesting to know that there's lots of sites around the world where we see these upwellings of energy, And it makes us think, like, why were they built this way? Was it a refueling station or some type of transportation location? We really don't know.
I was in Lourdes a couple weeks ago, Miracle Center in southern France. I put my hand on the rock where the Virgin Mary is said to have manifested as a light being. My arm is still tingling and on fire from that experience. I just put my hand on this rock and just went whoosh, right up my arm. And so it's just a personal testimonial that these sites are real. And this is why people like to go to sacred sites, be it Egypt, South America, wherever, southern France, because you can have these extraordinary experiences face to face, person to person, with these places. And that's what makes it so exciting, is that it truly is real. And I think that based on my research beginning with Saddam, that our government, of course, knows this. This is probably the reason why we went back into Baghdad and made a beeline for the Iraqi National Museum, was to reclaim all of Saddam's knowledge about these ancient stargates, the stargates of the Anunnaki. All of that information was bubbled up by Saddam, and we reclaimed it during the second invasion of Baghdad.
The looting was interesting too, because it wasn't like the Cairo looting or anything like that, where people were coming off the street. Supposedly there were reports of people, double access doorways were breached, people with earpieces working coordinated mechanisms to get in. It seemed like it was a much more coordinated attempt to remove the...
there were very specific things they were looking for. And there's a reason. Most people do not realize that even hinted within the biblical tradition is a well-documented knowledge of pre-Adamic advanced human civilization on this planet. It's well documented in the literature and very well known. Our governments today are very well aware of this. The ancient spiritual traditions of which I represent and I speak are, if you will, a continuation of these older technological systems, whether it be the Kabbalistic systems in Judaism, the Sufi system in Islam, of course in the Tibetan Buddhism, the Raja Yoga Sutras of the Patanjali system in Hinduism. All of these are, if you will, reminiscents, leftovers from ancient knowledge that have continued to this day. And David, never let it say that I'm not a troublemaker.
Well, remember the book of Genesis.
Let me just say this was one thing, because yes, it's in Genesis as well. Our governments are aware of this. Our governments do work with people of the spiritual, experiential traditions around the world. Yeah, of course, it's all top secret. None of it's ever going to come out. But in Israel, we're very well aware of wormhole technology, and they work with Kabbalists. They work with the sound technologies from the books of the Sefer Yetzirah, the writings of Abu Lafia, to integrate the type of technology that Travis works with the ancient technologies. I do not have access to that information, of course, in the United States. But I can't believe that under this cover level that all of these things are not somehow connected. And they knew very well what they were looking for in ancient Babylon. That is the old source, the old place which was known to have been a place of ascent. The government of America knew very well what they were looking for, because Israel pretty much told them where to go and what to look for.
And you have to remember, Stargates, that is the base experience in Western civilization. Judeo-Christian culture is based on a timeline that begins with Adam and Eve and ends with the book of Revelation, the second coming. The motivating incident in the book of the book of Genesis is Adam and Eve, archetypically all of humanity being evicted from Eden, this place of pure light and pure love. What happens after that eviction? Yahweh, this Old Testament God. Some people don't like him. They think he's not the great God, but he's a lesser God with a little g, some kind of controlling extraterrestrial. Kicks us out of Eden, does two things. He builds a gate at the east of Eden, puts a flashing, flaming sword in the middle of that gate, posts two cherubim on either side, and says, "Don't come back." Then he gives humanity coats of skin. You can go down to the Episcopal Church here, the Methodist Church down the street, they're going to tell you those coats of skin were lamb skin, cow skin, everything but what it really was, which is what the esoteric Judaic tradition tells us, which is that it was human skin. Because when we lived in Eden, in this pre-Adamic civilization, we were not in flesh and blood form. We were light beings. And then when we're evicted from Eden, now we're in one of these things.
That is what the Kabbalistic traditions teach.
Now we're trying to figure out how do we transcend this condition, and the answer is by utilizing the spiritual technology within the body to transform it, reclaim our original perfection is the term that they use, which means to become more whole, more holy, and more compassionate. And that's the key to opening these gates. That's part of the tone, is this transformation. We're not going to solve this by banging the door on the universe. Okay?
What you just described is a software backdoor, and what you're actually saying from this tradition is perhaps we were within the software before, right? And we could move about the programming, but now we're not. And we're external to the system, the operating system. And we have to figure out a way to transport or to upload ourselves back into the system in order to move about.
But not in a computer in Mountain View, California, please. Thank you. We're going to do that with the universe. We're not going into Facebook spaces.
One of the best examples or pieces of evidence that our universe is actually a giant program or computer is that it's pixelated. Every piece of the universe, down to the smallest piece of energy, time, and space, you actually cannot keep getting smaller and smaller. There is a single pixel. It's known as the Planck length, Planck distance, Planck time, Planck energy. All of these things, it's the tiniest Lego that can exist that make up our universe. And so the universe is actually pixelated just like a computer video game is. So there's a sampling that you have to do in our universe. Very, very tiny, extremely tiny, like 10 to the minus 35 centimeters or something like that. But my point here is the story, this tradition, it suggests that maybe what the Stargates are allowing you to do is to upload yourself from one part of the operating system to the other, as opposed to a physical transformation of moving a piece of matter from point A to point B.
Well, as you're familiar with the concept of quantum entanglement of physical particles, we believe that the actual three dimensions of the universe is space, which is three dimensions in of itself, time, and then the fifth or third dimension is consciousness, the mind. And that has a spiritual entanglement that through the power of mind, this is what we talk about, the power of positive thinking, projection of energy, energy healing, blessing, curse, all works through the projection of the power of mind. And that is the technological access that enables from point A to point B anywhere in every way. Oh, if I could just quickly state, when William was mentioning earlier about Yahweh being the little God, that's a 2nd century Gnostic teaching. It's been around for a long time. You're familiar with that kind. That's polemic religious kind of stuff. That goes on forever. Whatever.
I actually wrote a book about the quantum consciousness of the human brain. The book was called Science Behind the Secret, and the idea is that the human brain, we are discovering now, it is a quantum computer. It's actually more than just a computer, it's a quantum transceiver. And the universe itself is a big quantum phenomenon, and we cohere our thoughts to the greater piece that is the universe. You're not in the universe, you are a piece of the universe. And so as you train yourself better and better, your quantum brain can cohere to more of the universe and actually influence the universe.
And what you just described is the spiritual path that every meditative prophetic tradition around the world has been describing.
I love science and
training the mind, training the body, like what William was saying. All right? Yes, this whole tradition about us being beings of light, that is a teaching that was brought down by Rabbi Isaac Luria in 1572 in his book called the Shaddai Kavanot. We're very familiar with this. And that we call that body of light is called the Halukha Rabbanan, and that is the body of consciousness in the mind. Every religious spiritual tradition, forget the polemics, forget the theology, forget all the externals. It's the experiential internal, which we connect with, calibrate with, because our entire universe is energy. Just like that scene in the last part of The Matrix when Neo wakes up. I don't know if it's all a big computer program with numbers, but it's all energy. And when you calibrate with the energy, you experience the energy, then you know. And every religious tradition that I've met people from all different walks of life, without a word, we recognize, we know, we understand. There are members of our government who are on that page as well.
And if I may, David, as part of this light body transformation that I teach, I do workshops on the sacred art of ascension, because every spiritual tradition, from the Egyptians to the early Christians to the Tibetans, all tell you that art is a conduit or a doorway. Well, how can this be? Quantum entanglement explains that. Like, for example, the early Christians were taught that they could look at or contemplate, meditate, reflect on an image of Jesus in his transfiguration, his metamorphosis from flesh to light, and that your body already knows how to do this, and that this piece of art could act as a trigger. But more than that, they specifically said in their own words that it's a conduit, a portal, or a doorway. And now, with quantum entanglement, we can understand how that could possibly be, because if two particles were ever in contact with one another, they are always in contact with one another, and information can be instantaneously transmitted across dimensions, light years, whatever. And that's how art functions as this portal or a gateway. So if you're looking for a Stargate experience, find an image of a guru, Padmasambhava in the Tibetan tradition, Jesus in the Christian tradition, and begin to engage that artwork, and with the understanding that it is actually a portal or gateway into a higher dimensional realm.
Create your own artwork. That's the most beautiful thing. I have a dear friend of mine who's a very beautiful artist, but I look at the things that she does, literally, if you focus on it, it can put you into a trance. How many of you ever gone to a museum and you stand entranced at some of the beautiful artwork that you've seen out there? This is intentional, because art comes from the creativity within music. Same thing, science for that matter. Nikola Tesla, we discussed this in the Tesla program. All of this goes through what we call in psychology the libido energy. We call that the chi, the prana, the orgone, the nefesh. It's the energy within. And when you can become the conduit for this and express it in your personal format, writing, art, literature, music, science, you help channel this collective reality into a place where we can experience it and therefore connect and transform the world.